President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before we proceed to the co-prosecution to put further questions to the witness, the chamber would like to rule orally on the request for testimony of TCCP1 as follows. On the 19th of October 2012, the trial chamber received a memorandum from the Witness and Expert Support Unit indicating that civil party TCCP1, age 68, requested to testify by video link and indicating that 1. She had significant anxiety about traveling to Phnom Penh. 2. She continues to suffer from distressing memories of events that befell her before she left Cambodia. 3. She has lost everyone she once knew in Cambodia. And 4. Her husband was unable to travel with her to Cambodia in a supporting role. Document E236/1/1. The trial chamber granted the request by civil party TCCP1 to testify via video link from France and scheduled her testimony for the 12th to the 13th of December 2012. Document E236/1/1/1. The chamber noted that TCCP1 is not an expert, would not likely implicate a large number of documents, and therefore video link testimony would be feasible. It further noted that TCCP1's emotional and physical fragility are such that testimony by video link is required. At that time, the parties were not aware of TCCP1's request and therefore had not lodged any objection. The Ieng Sary defense now moves the court to provide further reasoning to support its decision, because the trial chamber has not demonstrated that TCCP1's request is justified and requests that TCCP1 appear in court to testify. Document E236/1/1/2. The request, paragraph 17. The trial chamber notes that it has broad discretion to permit evidence by video link whenever necessary, so long as such measures are not seriously prejudicial to or inconsistent with defense rights. CICC decision in Prosecutor versus Bemba of the 3rd of February 2012, paragraph 5. See also Internal Rule 26, subparagraph 1. The defense submits that accepting TCCP1's testimony by video link would prejudice the rights of the accused because it is not unreasonable to assume that TCCP1's testimony was inculpatory during the accused Ieng Sari's 1979 trial. Request paragraph 15. This is undermined by the defense submission that TCCP1's testimony is not vital to establishing the guilt of the accused. Request paragraph 13. Although the accused maintained his right to object to witnesses testifying in his absence, where the testimony directly or indirectly touches upon me or any alleged conduct or crimes attributed to me in the closing order, the accused Ieng Sari previously waived the accused's rights to attend the in-court testimony of the TCCP1 E237 when Ieng Sari and his lawyers had access to various documents which contained a clear description of the experiences of this civil party during the Democratic Cambodia era, including the loss of her husband, her daughter, and many other relatives.
2/36.2D199/15 បន្ទាប់ពីអង្គជំនះរដ្ឋបងបានសន្និដ្ឋានថាជនជាប់ចោទអៀងសេរីមានសម្បទាគ្រប់គ្រាន់ដើម្បី
Document D22/36, D22/36.2, D199/15. After the trial chamber found the accused Ieng Sari fit to stand trial, that waiver was withdrawn. Document E237/2 and the Ieng Sari defense now submits that video link testimony will not permit Mr. Ieng Sari or his lawyers to fully access the civil party testimony. Request paragraph 16. As noted by the OCP, this assertion runs counter to international procedural rules established by the ICTY, which has held that an accused does not lose materially from the fact or the physical absence of the witness when testifying by video link. The defense further submits that TCCP's one's physical and emotional fragility is not adequately supported by evidence. Request paragraph 11. The chamber notes that video link testimony is fully justified to protect the psychological well-being and dignity of its witnesses, subject to the fundamental dictates of a fair trial. See ICC decision in Lubanga of the 9th of February 2010, paragraphs 15 and 16. In addition to the communications from TCCP1 through Wesu, TCCP1 civil party application makes clear that she suffered physical, material, or psychological injury on the basis of at least one of the crimes alleged in case 002/01, Internal Rule 23 bis. Indeed, the acceptance of her civil party application by the OCIJ, which was not appealed by the Evidentiary defense, supports this fact. Furthermore, the trial chamber is now in receipt of a medical certificate attesting to TCCP's inability to travel to Phnom Penh due to her health status. For the foregoing reasons, the trial chamber rejects the Evidentiary defense motion to summon civil party TCCP1 to testify in Cambodia. Next, the chamber would like to hand over to the prosecution to continue putting questions to the witness. Prosecution, you may hold on. Counsel Canavas, you may proceed.
Just to make sure that the record is absolutely clear and that our position is clear, it was at 11:53 today that we actually got the medical certificate. Had the trial chamber provided this medical certificate in advance, had we been aware of the conditions as opposed to just merely an assertion, perhaps we would have taken a different posture. So it is our position that whenever the trial chamber makes decisions on video linking, we are going to insist that everything be done correctly and by the numbers. And if we don't have the sufficient information, we will ask that either the person come in person or in the alternative for certification to be provided. So we apologize for the inconvenience, but if we had this information before, we certainly would not have made.
The President, Counsel, indeed, the ruling has already been made. The floor is now given to the prosecution, please.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all parties. Mr. Witness, just before resuming where we left off prior to the lunch break, with respect to discussion on Sector 105, I do have a few questions to put to you for the purpose of clarifications. You stated that you did not witness any evacuees or the arrival of evacuees at Sector 105. However, did you note the movement of any villagers or other residents from Sector 105 during the period of 1975 to 1976?
Response. I am afraid, Mr. President, I don't quite understand the question.
Je vais essayer de la simplifier. Vous aviez...
Allow me to simplify. You stated that you did not see the evacuation of Phnom Penh residents arrive in Mondulkiri. However, at Mondulkiri, within Sector 105, did you note any movements of population that had been organized by Sector 105? Did you note any residents from Sector 105 being transferred from one area to another during the period from 1975 to 1979 as authorized by the upper cadres of the district?
Response. Yes, there was an evacuation that in which people were evacuated from the mountainous areas to do farming in the lower land area.
Est-ce que vous savez pourquoi c'était...
Do you understand why the evacuation took place? And why such a transfer of population was justified?
Response. I do not know from whom the order was rendered for the evacuation, but I know that such evacuation took place.
Merci. Est-ce que la population...
Thank you. Do you know if people agreed with being transferred from the mountainous area to farming land?
Response. I do not think I understand about whether they objected to such order or they came to that place voluntarily.
Merci. J'en reviens.
Thank you. I wish to return to some questions with respect to Division 105. Who was at the head of Sector 105 and how far it was from K-17?
Response. The headquarters of 920 Division was about 7 kilometers from K-17.
Merci. Sur le territoire de quel...
Thank you. In what commune was Office 920 located? Was it also in Phnom Kral or was it elsewhere?
Response. It was in Phnom Kral.
Merci. Quelles étaient les fonctions ou le rôle du bureau?
Thank you. What was the role or responsibilities of K-17? What were the general responsibilities that fell under the purview of K-17?
Response. At the office of 105, there was a workshop unit, for example, auto repair unit, and the mobile production unit, the unit in which there were people who had to do farming.
Vous avez parlé du bureau 105.
Thank you. You're referring to Sector 105. I'm referring to Office K-17. I'm not sure we're talking about one and the same thing. I am referring to the office that your father had overseen. What was the role and purpose of K-17 within the overall sector of 105 during the time that your father was responsible for the office?
Response. I think this place is known interchangeably with 105 because the local people would call it K-17 when the other would say 105.
D'accord, donc...
Very well. And aside from the garage and the mechanics division, were there any other services that were included within Division 920 under the auspices of Sector 105? Were there any other administrative bodies?
Response. There were other sections including the worker section and security within Office of 105. The office was classified into different sections when people had to work and stay at different houses.
Pouvez-vous nous dire si
Can you please tell us whether K17, as a central office, held any overarching responsibilities over the activities in Mandaluyong?
ការចំនួនហ្នឹង
Response. At that time, I did not understand the role or functions of K17 because my father was overly in charge of K17 when Phnom Kraul was called 105.
Je voudrais juste clarifier les choses.
Just a brief clarification, sir. Because in PVE 3/57, on Khmer page 3, 00287702, on Frontier N page 3, and also on ERN page 3 of the English version, with leave of the chamber, I would like for this passage to be projected on the screen. Sir, you stated the following. K17 was responsible for the general affairs of Sector 105. It was where the General Assembly, military training, economic updates, as well as transportation and medical affairs were managed. Does this refresh your memory with respect to the operations of K17, particularly with respect to the holding of meetings at K17?
Response. Their account is correct. However, I have no idea what happened during the meetings or the content of the meetings. I know for sure that my father was the chief of K17, but 105 was the overall office covering the whole geographical location of Mandaluyong.
Merci. Je vais revenir tout.
Thank you. I will return a little later on to the issue of meetings. Now, you said that your father was at the head of Sector 105. Can you please identify who the other principal leaders were at Sector 105? Can you please identify who the head of meetings were, who the head of section was? And please provide the names and exact roles that they played within Sector 105.
Response. These people already passed away. They included Uncle Sophia, Wansi, and another person. One person who survives is Brother Sarun.
Et parmi ceux qui sont décédés,
And of those who have passed away, could you please identify who your father's close associates and collaborators were?
អនុប្រធាន
Response. There were these two people, Uncle Sophia and Poon, and Uncle May also, but these people already passed away.
merci. Pour vous aider aussi à...
Thank you. And perhaps to assist you in remembering the duties and roles of each and every one, allow me to quote from the same written record of witness interview, which is E3/57, on page 5 and 6 of the Khmer version, 00287705. 206, on page 6 of the French version, and on page 5 of the English version. You provided the names and roles of the various cadres who were working in Sector 105, and you said the following. Ta Kang-un was responsible for politics and policy. Ta Sarun was the deputy leader. May was in charge of education. Cham, C-H-A-M, was a deputy. Ra was a deputy in charge of general issues. There was An Si, a deputy, and he was the secretary of Keo Sima district. There was Chun. He was the deputy in charge of the provincial commercial unit. There was also Sophia, in charge of the military sector. There was Heveng, Sophia's deputy, as well as La, a deputy of military affairs, and Meng, another deputy of military affairs, as well as Peng, another deputy of military affairs, and they all worked under my father. Sir, do all of these names and duties refresh your memory, and do you stand by that statement?
Response: yes, it is correct, what you just quoted. And among these people, only Kampun, rather only Uncle Sarun and Mang still alive. The other already passed away.
Justement, à propos de Ta Sarun.
And in regards to Ta Sarun, you stated that he was a deputy chief. Did he also play a role within, at the district level for Sector 105?
Response: yes, it is correct. He used to work at the district committee, but I don't remember of which district he worked, whether... I just don't remember.
Est-ce que Ta Sarun venait souvent?
Did Ta Sarun travel frequently to K17 in order to partake in meetings with leaders, including your father, when he was present in the district?
Response: yes, he came there rather often.
Dans l'extrait que j'ai lu, vous avez également...
In the same passage that I read out, you made mention of Mr. An Si. You characterized Mr. An Si as the deputy and secretary of Gyeosema district. Was he also a member of your family?
He was my uncle.
Est-ce que Annecy...
Did An Si pass away, or did he survive the Khmer Rouge regime along with the two individuals you mentioned?
He died on a later date.
Est-ce que, au sein du bureau...
Within Sector 105, there was also an office called K11. Is this correct?
No, it is not. There was no K11.
Est-ce que vous avez entendu...
Did you ever hear about the existence of an office called K16?
That I do not recall. But as far as I could recollect, there was no such an office.
Who replaced your father as Secretary of Sector 105 after his death?
Tasarun.
Tout à l'heure, vous avez dit
You told us a little while ago, you said that you didn't remember which district committee he was on. I'd just like to remind you that in E357, on page 6 in the Khmer version, ERN 00287705, page 6 in English and 7 in French, in that record you said that Tasarun replaced my father until the arrival of the Yuan. Tasarun at that time was the secretary of O Reng. When Tasarun became the secretary of Sector 105, Uncle Luak became his deputy and held that position until the arrival of the Yuan. Do you remember that he indeed was a secretary of O Reng district?
I am not clear about the secretary of Orang or Pachinda. I could not recall it clearly.
merci.
Thank you. You mentioned that there was a security centre for District 105 at Phnom Kraul. Who was in charge of the Phnom Kraul Security Centre between 1975 and 77?
Lane was in charge of security.
So for the transcript, when you say Leng, can we spell this out? We're talking about your father or somebody else?
No, he was somebody else. Leng.
Vous avez dit tout à l'heure que
Just now you said that Sokpi was responsible for security. So between Leng and Sopir, what was the hierarchical relationship?
I do not really understand your question.
vous avez dit
Just now you said that Sopir was in charge of security in Sector 105. And you confirmed what you stated to the investigating judges, namely that Sopir was responsible for the army in that region. As for Leng, who was in charge of the security centre, did he work closely with Sopir, who was responsible for the military forces of Region 105?
Supir was the military commander in charge of security, but Lane was the person who was placed directly in charge of security.
merci.
Thank you. Were there Sector 105 offices not in Mondulkiri but in Phnom Penh? And if there were, what was the purpose of them?
Can you please simplify your question? Are you asking me about the security office or what office?
Je voudrais savoir
No, I want to know if Sector 105 had branches, offices, opened in Phnom Penh, representing 105 in Phnom Penh.
Yes, there was.
est-ce que c'est
And was there a code name for those offices? And what were the purposes of those offices?
The branch office in Phnom Penh was tasked to receive materials and supplies in order to supply to Sector 105.
est-ce qu'on appelait ce
Was it known as a trading office, or did it have another title?
Yes, it was called the commercial Office of Commerce of Office 105.
lorsque des cadres
When Sector 105 cadres went to Phnom Penh, did they stay in that Sector 105 Office of Commerce?
Yes, they did. They stay at the Commerce Office of 105.
Merci Jean.
Thank you. Let's come back to the meetings that you said you didn't know very much about, while at the same time saying that there were get-togethers at K17. Can you tell us how frequently assemblies were held? In other words, the really big meetings in K17. How many times a year were these things held?
It was held rather frequently. Normally, the meeting was held on a monthly basis, but I did not know the content or the subject matters discussed in those meetings.
Merci. Merci. Lors de
At these monthly meetings, who came from the various districts? What level of representation was there from the districts participating? Was it the district chiefs, or did other people participate in addition to the Sector 105 committee?
President, witness, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Ingsari, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Based on the gentleman's earlier answer, it would appear that he would be speculating if he were to provide an answer, unless, of course, a foundation is laid. He's indicated that he didn't attend the meetings. So if he didn't attend the meetings, how would he know who was at the meetings?
If I could answer as well, Mr. President, I think it's perfectly possible to know who was participating in the meetings, who was coming from 105 without necessarily having to go into the meeting room to see who was there. And I think it's a perfectly justifiable question, Mr. President.
President, objection and the ground of objection by the Defense Counsel for Mr. Ieng Sary are not appropriate and thus not sustained. So witness is directed to respond to the last question posed by the prosecutor.
Je vais peut-être la reformuler.
I'm going to reword this because a little bit of time has gone by since I first asked it. Who attended these monthly meetings in K17? Who in the districts or in the communes or at other levels was actually attending?
There were representation from various districts. Sometimes the district chief, but in the past, back then they called them district secretaries. They would come to attend the meetings. But there were different formats of the meeting. Sometimes the meeting were convened among the district secretaries. Sometimes they were convened for the deputy district committee.
When you were talking to us about monthly meetings, do you mean the enlarged meetings with the district representatives, or were these smaller meetings limited to the Sector 105 committees?
They were meant for those who work in the in Sector 105 committee.
Et à quelle fréquence les secrétaires du
And how often did the district secretaries come to K17? Several times a year, was it?
It was almost once every month.
Est-ce que tous les secrétaires de
Did all the district secretaries belong to the Sector 105 committee?
According to the hierarchical structure, of course, they were members of the sector.
Merci.
Thanks for clarifying that. Apart from these regular meetings, were there also political education sessions on a wider scale that were held in K17?
Yes, there was.
Et qui avait le droit
And who was entitled to participate in those meetings? Was it Sector 105 party cadres?
Generally, they were meant for the cadres of Sector 105.
Est-ce qu'il y avait
Was there an education school in each district where political training sessions were held as well?
At the district level, there was no education center. There was only one education center located in Phnom Kraul.
Merci. Je voudrais lire.
Thank you. I'd like to read out an extract from the interview record E3/57 on page 5 in Khmer, ERN 00287704. In French it's on page 5, and in English it's also on page 5. And you said there, at that time I was secretary to my father. In the region office there was an education hall for the sector. At the district level there was also a district education hall. They searched for the enemy through education, study, self-criticism and reports. End of quote. Can you clarify what you said to the investigating judges at that time, that there was that district education hall and a hall for the sector?
Let me clarify this. Concerning the self-criticism session, it was conducted regularly and generally, and normally the cadres of Sector 105 would come to assemble and receive certain trainings, and then they went back to their respective districts, and then they would call for the self-criticism session. That was the practice. So this was a ongoing sessions that were held regularly at the base level.
Est-ce que vous...
Did you yourself attend education sessions in addition to self-criticism sessions in K17?
I attended the training based on the areas of my responsibility. I did attend certain training cater for my specific responsibility, but as for the enlarged meeting, I did not attend. Now, for example, for the group or squad or so, they would attend regular self-criticism sessions.
Dans le même esprit.
In that same extract, you said that it was through education and study and self-criticism and reports that the enemy was actually searched for. Can you tell us why it was necessary to identify these enemies in Sector 105?
That I did not understand it either, but it was the practice, a general practice at the times, that they would search for enemies during those sessions. During the self-criticism session, those who did not fall in lines with the groups, they would be alleged of being enemies.
Est-ce qu'il est...
Apart from the self-criticism sessions, where certain individuals had different positions to those of the groups, apart from that, was it made clear to you who were the actual enemies of democratic Cambodia?
At that times, it was never clear. I did not know. I did not know who were the target of the parties. But normally, those who attended those sessions return to their base, and then they mysteriously disappear. And those people were sort of being the enemy.
Vous avez évoqué devant les juges.
When you were talking to the investigating judges, you mentioned the fact that there was a 12-point moral code and you kept a copy of it in your pocket so as to be able to read it. Before going into these points, tell us, was somebody who didn't respect any of those 12 moral or disciplinary precepts considered an enemy?
At the time, they were not all alleged of being the enemies, because there were different types of enemies. There were conscientiousness enemy, or different or other types of enemy. But for conscientiousness enemy, they would not be removed.
Merci. Vous venez parler de...
Thank you. You've told us about various types of enemy. Apart from enemies of conscience, what about other kinds of enemies? Could you quote some examples?
As I told you earlier, the ideological enemies, those who did not fall in line with the organization at the times, were also alleged to be the enemy of the party. But I did not know how they characterize those groups of people. I did not understand it at the time.
Merci. Pouvez-vous nous en dire plus?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the 12-point moral code that had to be adhered to?
I do not recall the 12 moral codes, but most important of all was the moral livings. In the early days, many people supported these 12 moral codes, but later on, everyone was alleged of the enemies of the party. That's why people did not abide by these 12 moral codes anymore. Of course, the essence of these moral codes was to respect each other in society, pay respect to Buddhist monks, and so on and so forth. But later on, people did not adhere to these 12 moral codes. They lived by their own moral codes.
Thank you. Were the party cadres asked to regularly write their biographies?
Yes, they were.
Est-ce que vous savez...
Do you know what a pure biography would look like under the Khmer Rouge?
I did not understand the requirement of the personal biography at that time, but most important of all, we did not own any properties by ourselves. Everything belongs to the collective group, and we only had with us plain clothes on our body, only two sets of plain clothes.
Merci.
Thank you. Before coming on to ask you about your work, and in particular the telegram communication work, I'd like to ask you one or two questions about your brothers and sisters. Can you tell us the names of your brothers and sisters and their revolutionary names, starting with the eldest and finishing with the youngest?
As for my biological brothers and sisters, I have a youngest brother by the name of Thiet, and he is still alive now. T, La, Thi, Han, and myself. Oh, one more, Vani. So I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Do you have a sister, called Pansavan Han?
Yes, I do.
Est-ce que son surnom
Was her second name Bopin?
Response. The original name was Bopan, actually.
Merci.
Thank you. Did that elder sister work for your father in Sector 105? And what particular duties did she perform, if she did?
Response. She worked for my father only very briefly in the telegram section.
Merci.
Thank you. You also refer to your sister T. Are you referring to Pan T, who was born in 1959?
Response. Yes, it is correct.
Est-ce qu'elle a jamais...
And did she ever work in Sector 105 with your father?
Response. No.
Où a-t-elle travaillé durant...
Where did she work during the Khmer Rouge regime? Very briefly, sir.
Response. I'm not quite sure where she worked, but she worked with Tatoj. Later on, she lived elsewhere.
Merci. Pouvez-vous nous dire où a...
Thank you. Can you please tell us where your younger brother Vani worked?
Response. He is now in the district, in the hometown, of course.
Bon, je voulais dire... où a...
I'm sorry, what I meant was, where did your younger brother Vani work during the Khmer Rouge period?
Văn cả nắng đầu mùi ta Pol Pot nào cả na thì họ cho bạn đem tên mình ti.
One at that time perhaps worked with Pol Pot.
Vous avez dit dans votre audition.
In your interview before the investigators of the co-investigating judges, you stated that Banvani had been adopted by Pol Pot. Was your father, Leng, close to Pol Pot, particularly during the years of struggle before he came to power?
Response. During the time when they ran away into the jungle, they passed the center and they got to know my father. I did not know how well they knew one another, but they stayed some time in Madokari.
Merci. Pour en revenir.
Thank you. Let us just return for a moment to the work of Bopan Sovan. Did this person work within the service overseen by your father? Because you stated that Bopan worked for a short period of time.
Response. It happened at a later date.
Vous avez déclaré.
You stated before the co-investigating judges that you decoded telegrams for your father. You were also working as a personal messenger. Were you also serving as your father's secretary?
Response. I don't understand the term secretary because at that time that was not my title. I was a messenger and a driver.
Merci.
Thank you. And as a messenger and as a driver, but you also stated that you decoded telegrams. Can you please tell us to whom you delivered messages within Sector 105 during the time that you were working at K17?
Response. Messenger at that time did not only mean that you had to carry messages to someone. You were expected to also do some kind of security work.
Merci pour cette précision, mais est-ce que...
Thank you for that detail. However, in addition to your duties as a messenger, and in addition to your security duties, did you deliver any messages to cadres working within Sector 105?
Response. I used to carry messages to district chiefs and also had to transport them back and forth to attend meetings.
Merci. De quel chef de district parlez-vous?
Thank you. Which district chief are you referring to? Are you referring to one single secretary of a district, or are you referring to several district heads to whom you had delivered messages?
Response. It depends on the service I had to offer. For example, if each chief of district would like me to carry the letters or messages to him or her, then I would go to each particular district.
Est-ce qu'il y avait un service de télégramme au niveau des districts?
Could telegrams be sent from the districts to K17 or other offices? Was there any particular section of telegrams organized within the district?
Response. At that time, there was no such telegram section at district level in Mondulkiri. We had to use letters or messages to communicate with one another.
Merci. Est-ce que
Thank you. And were those various letters and messages that came from the district chiefs encoded?
Response. The letters from districts would not be decoded. They were placed in envelopes. They were just ordinary letters, but we were not authorized to open and read them.
peut-être une dernière question, Monsieur.
Mr. President, perhaps one final question before we break, if I may. Did your father travel frequently to Phnom Penh between 1975 and 1977?
Response. Yes, he did. He did travel to Phnom Penh rather frequently during the time when there was fighting with the Vietnamese. The President, thank you. We would like now to adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will be resumed by 3 o'clock. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness and his jury counsel during the adjournment and have them return to the courtroom by the said time.